So, we are almost 6 months into the year already. Can we firstly just stop here to take that in for a second? Yeah, okay. And it's safe to say that the road through 2022 for Planetside 2 so far has been anything but a smooth ride. So, let's step back, take a moment and assess where we are actually today and what's happening. G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Planetside series 19-year anniversary event that's on the test server, but we also need to have a very long chat about the state of the game and talk about how I think things are going thus far. So, for those of you who are yet to see the news thus far, there are some brand new toys for us to check out on the test server right now that are coming for the anniversary event that I think is officially slated for the 19th of May? Doesn't matter. The important part is what is actually coming to the game. New Empire-specific AntiMaterial Rifles. That is a new anti-material rifle for the NC, TR, VS, and NSO respectively, and each of them are unique as far as stats and performance are concerned, which means that there's always room for some discrepancies in actual in-game performance and capabilities. Let's take a look at the rifles now and see what is what. I'm going to be a little bit biased here and start off with the NC. Try and stop me. In all seriousness, the NC here get the LA-60 masthead, a hard-hitting anti-material rifle that deploys a flak payload when dealing with aircraft, which is as devastating as it sounds. The stats are listed on your screen currently, but here are the key takeaways so far. The masthead sports a heftier damage payload by comparison to the Archer, and sports better damage payloads at longer distances across the board. All you need to know is that it confidently one-shot headshots infantry out to ranges in excess of 110 meters, I've tested this, and at 2 shots max suits with headshots to around the same distance. The weapon does sport a heftier indirect damage, that being the splash damage, but I want to make this really clear nice and fast as there seems to be some confusion on this front. This indirect damage only activates when engaging aircraft, so nothing to panic about there. But this thing, on the other hand, will take out an ESF in 5 shots. As some people on Reddit have already demonstrated, Valkyries running engineers on board with this thing are going to be crazy. It sports a slightly weaker muzzle velocity and slightly longer rechamber time as well, but nothing game breaking. The hipfire as well feels pretty good, not gonna lie. Honestly, this thing is fucking brutal. The key downside that I think will take some time to deal with is the fact that the lowest scope magnification you can mount to it is a 6x, which applies to all of the rifles we'll be covering here today, just as an FYI. But regardless of that, this thing hits heavy. It demolishes max suits, and infantry are just as susceptible at ranges you would expect with a weapon like this to be used. Let's change tune a bit here and move on to the TR rifle, the Dagger 81. This by description in-game is an infantryman's answer to long-range vehicle opposition with a quick rechamber time and large magazine size for sustained fire. Let's talk about that for a second and make a cheeky comparison between it and the baseline for performance here, the Archer. The Dagger sports an improved rechamber time with a magazine size of 8 rounds, which gives it the ability to output some consistent fire over time. However, that has come at a significant hit to the damage payload on offer here. The maximum damage range is sliced significantly, and the outright damage has been reduced with what appears to be no listed supporting indirect damage on offer to compensate. As such, at this point, the Dagger can only headshot infantry up to approximately a 20-meter range at the time of testing. But what I can't work out is that a 2.4 times headshot multiplier on this damage model is only 900 damage, which shouldn't one-shot opponents at all. So, there's either a misprint in the stats, there's an indirect damage that isn't listed on the stats card, or the headshot multiplier on this weapon is through the roof to compensate. It still can 2-shot max suits at most ranges, but there is less overlapping damage, which means that max suits with solid support behind them are going to have an easier time dealing with this weapon comparatively to, say, the NC one. In saying that, chaining headshots on a max suit with the faster rechamber time is still pretty savage if you can keep your rounds accurate. But even with that reduced rechamber time on offer here, I really don't think it makes up for the lack of damage to be considered a powerful trade-off that makes this rifle worth using over the Archer. The whole note about it being an answer to long-range vehicle fire. Look, let's just say that if this was the TR's answer to long-range vehicle harassments, it's a miracle they haven't lost the war yet. It's not very effective in the grand scheme of things, and I think the Dagger needs some serious work before it being battle-ready for the live servers. It just has to be said. It just feels more like a chore than a pleasure to run, comparatively speaking, at this stage. And speaking of chores, how about this for a segue? We're moving on to the Vanu Sovereignty Rifle next. The VS are getting the VX4-3 Slicer, which is an anti-material rifle that delay fires a plasma blade that rips through organic material to striking heavily armored targets. Couple of points to focus on here. This rifle has a built-in sabot ammo that will pierce enemy targets but will stop as soon as it hits anything armored like a tank or a piece of deployable, something like that. And it's a weapon with a delay fire attached, which yes, means I am already less of a fan of this weapon comparatively speaking to the Archer. But running a comparison to the Archer, here's what we've got. This weapon also sports a faster rechamber time. In fact, it's actually on par with that of the Dagger, which I find a bit funny considering that the Dagger's description makes special mention of a fast rechamber time. But the small fire delay that the Slicer has access to does balance it out slightly, I think, but I gotta be real, it kind of makes the TR rifle feel even more mediocre by comparison. The Slicer is also hit with a very slight damage reduction by comparison to the Archer, but is once again only capable of one-shotting infantry via a headshot within a very particular distance. We're talking within 30 meters based on my testing. But at 40 meters, the player in question is left with a very little slither of health left. Max suits still do seem to drop pretty quickly via headshots with this thing, so that's something at least. The weapon has no bullet drop, but let's be honest, with all the testing that I've done with weapons, bullet drop has yet to come into the equation as being a meaningful factor at this stage. So yeah, much like the TR weapon, I feel like the trade-offs that are here when compared against the Archer just aren't worth your time. And that primarily comes from the delay fire mechanic. If it hit harder or had a blitzing muzzle velocity, I feel like it would be a little bit more worth your while to deal with that, that trade-off of the delay fire, but it just ain't there yet in my mind either. Lastly, I want to hit the NSO rifle, and despite its place on the order of coverage here, this might actually be the rifle I'm most excited for when it comes to the very specific role of dealing with max suits. Despite the fact that it looks like a section of construction scaffolding from the first-person perspective, I think the NSO rifle brings about the most interesting effect that's worth highlighting a bit. The NE36 line cutter is an AMR with a balanced magazine, reload, and damage payload that also sports the unique ability to equip an ammo type that adds the Havoc effect to the weapon, which disables repairs on max suits and on infantry deployables for 4 seconds upon impact. This does not work on vehicles at this stage of the test. Stats-wise, it carries a better damage payload over range by comparison to the Archer, a better magazine size, and slightly better rechamber time. It loses out a smidge in the maximum damage department, but it makes up for that in the damage fall-off range. I was able to get successful, consistent one-hit kills out to around about 55 meters, so it's certainly more capable in that department than the most recent two we've just looked at. However, as I said, the key highlight here is the equipable ammo type. At the cost of an increase to your rechamber time by 0.15 seconds, you can apply the Havoc effect to max units for 4 whole seconds. Very powerful stuff that is going to seriously impact a max suit's ability to stick around as long as you are present. This is the first direct fire iteration of Havoc ammunition that we have seen in the game thus far, and I have a feeling it's going to be very prominent as players start to use the line cutter a bit more. And I've got to say, I'll be included in that collection of players myself. If I was to rank the rifles right now as they stand, I'd have to say the NC and the NSO are both equally as good for different reasons, but the TR and VS are both equally as painful for different reasons as well. I hope some further revisiting goes into these rifles before they launch, but, well, more on that in a second. There are also some brand new bundles coming to the game to celebrate the upcoming event, sporting some boosts, a drop pod, some perfect exceptional implants, which I still believe all exceptional implants should be account-wide. But anyway, the real highlight for me are the Apex weapons, which are reskins of the default weapons for the TR, NC, and VS assault rifles. And I have to say, I really like their designs. I know visuals in a game are subjective and they aren't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I have to give my commendations to the artists behind these weapons. I really like them. They feel like they really accent their factions and their unique designs. And I'm honest, I'm a true sucker for faction-specific aesthetics, especially when they really accent a faction's feel. So yeah, I know it's not important in the grand scheme of things, but I really do love the look of these weapons. Leave your thoughts on them in the comment section down below, guys. I want to hear what you have to say. Now, unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and rainbows at the moment. This brings me to a big old elephant in the room that continues to loom like that unwelcome fart in an elevator. The server issues. Connery, despite the recent attempt to fix things, still runs like ass, and not the good ass either. Immediately after the attempted fix, things felt sorta better for a while, but not for long. It feels like we're right back where we started, and I'll be honest, I'm tired of it. I really am. And I know that the bloke who is animating, sound designing, and 3D modeling these new weapons into the game doesn't have the first clue of how to fix a networking server error. So I will cut the devs some slack on that front as they continue to bring new stuff to the game over time, even months after these issues have prevailed. But by the same token, this has been around for 2 months now. And while I admire wanting to continue pressing on in the fields that your staff are experienced in, the issues now, for some communities, are just going to completely null and void the effort made by those artists, animators, sound designers, level design, whatever. Due to the player frustration on the tech side of things, any effort those devs go through to bring us good content is simply going to fall on deaf ears or uninterested eyeballs. Some people will have now had 2 months worth of membership completely wasted. And to me, it would be kind of unacceptable to not have any compensation come the way of players affected by the problems. I don't mean to sound like a video gaming Karen here, but if this was any other game, or any other industry for that matter, that was online based and required functioning servers to operate, and if those servers were to go down, there were, clients or businesses or users that were negatively affected by said downtime that was extended, you can bet your bottom dollar there would be some kind of uproar. Could you imagine if World of Warcraft was experiencing these kinds of server issues for 2 months in a row? The outcry would be astronomical. And I personally don't think Planetside is free from that criticism because it's a smaller game. At the end of the day, some of us, myself included, pay for the product, and therefore we expect it to work. That's not really such a tall ask. I understand that these things happen, but at the same time, to see no tangible progress being made while our money is being technically flushed down the toilet, it's obviously going to be a bit frustrating. Now, in these public test server patch notes, the developers have confirmed that they are trying some new changes to the redeploy system to try and amend some of the server issues, or to at least get some data points regarding where the issues are originating from. I am hoping, so hoping that this fixes the state of the game a little bit, but these last couple of months have told me not to get my hopes up. Regardless, going forward, I personally think that there needs to be way more communication ensuring players that yes, things are being looked into, even if there's nothing tangible to report. Some ideas as to what's happening behind the scenes or what is being tried to fix things would go a long way for community sentiment. For me, personally, this has been an incredibly frustrating period as both a player and a content creator. As a player, I still want to play the game at its peak population hours, enjoy the fights, enjoy the new Arsenal update changes, and as a content creator, I want to be delving deep, making content, getting into the nitty and the gritty, and really enjoy making content for the game again like I always have done. I'm sure some of you are getting sick of me talking about the issues, but gang, it's all I can talk about while all my other Planetside 2 content is kind of stuck on hold, dancing around these server issues. And I'm not going to be quiet about it until things are fixed. And before we tie off this video, guys, and call it a day here, this also serves as a pretty fitting opportunity, in my opinion, to talk about, well, how this year has been tracking for Planetside. We all know that so far it hasn't been the smoothest of sailing. While some new and exciting stuff has come to the game and is still coming, it feels like the core experience of the game and some of the quality of life has been suffering. Hear me out here. This is the first time in a long time where Planetside has had a fully fleshed out roadmap with this much content in the pipeline for it. And you know what? I'm genuinely excited that such a roadmap exists, and the developers are in the capacity to have such a roadmap out there. As someone who wants to see this game succeed, I love seeing more resources and more things get thrown the game's way for it to hopefully become the best it can be. However, a roadmap sets expectations. It creates public-facing deadlines, and it creates crunch periods to reach those public-facing deadlines. And I think at times, we might be seeing that seep through a bit. The recent menu system update that we saw come to the game is a key example of that, in my opinion. It released in a state that had some pretty glaring issues that were raised, many of which are being fixed in this next update that is coming, so that's all well and good and all, but last year I made a video that really tried to push home the point that testing is so bloody important. Remember when the Seeker HLX came out to the game and the game basically became AC-130 side? Me too. And it could have been more than avoided with longer testing periods. Taking the time to test and implement changes before pushing updates to the live game where things can have negative effects on the general playability of your game to a larger population is so bloody important. And when you're on a timetable as established by a roadmap, well, you don't want to miss key deadlines, I get it. But I promise that when you have a community that is as willing to test new stuff as the Planetside community is, and is passionate to see this game work, we're happy to wait. We are happy for polish to come before arbitrary deadlines. There's no point in releasing something that has glaring issues, only to fix them a couple of weeks later if they were already identified in the initial testing period. If things aren't picked up in testing, then sure, just punch out a quick hotfix and get things sorted out as fast as you can. That's how games work. But if things are picked up and ignored, or if things are not given an ample amount of time to be tested before they go live, well then, at that point, the damage is done once it goes to the live server. And while the release of the menu in its state was just a mild annoyance to some, and I have to admit it wasn't game breaking, it was just annoying, it makes me worry that we are on track to repeat the Seeker HLX incident all over again, and I don't want that. So, to the developers, I get it. You don't want to disappoint, you don't want to miss these deadlines, but please, take your time. Utilize your test servers for lengthy periods of time, and get some updates out there that are home runs after we have fixed the server issues and players are given the opportunity to truly enjoy the hard work you're putting into the game again. I get it, you've got a passionate team that don't know the first thing about fixing a server and its network related issues, wanting to continue developing on their projects, but I promise you, these updates are going to continue to fall on deaf ears if the core game is unplayable. Pushing ahead now while these server issues plague your game is not the way to go. And I hope we can return back to playing Planetside as best as we can very, very soon. And I've got to say, this video ended up being way longer than I originally thought it was going to be, so here we are. If you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to backhand the like button, it goes a long way to supporting the channel. And if you're new here, consider backhanding that subscribe button, also goes a long way in supporting the channel, and it means you guys get to stay up to date with whenever we do videos or go live here on YouTube in the future. Social media links are as always linked down below. I would personally recommend getting on our Discord, we have a lot of fun there. And if you want to support the channel further, consider a channel membership by using the join button down below. It goes a long way in supporting the channel as well, guys. As always, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Take care. Have a good one.